Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and today's episode is brought to you by the word mondegreen, which, apropos to something we were talking about offline, is when you hear lyrics and they are actually different from the actual lyrics, it's called a mondegreen.
I know that.
There's
a bathroom on the right. That's a classic mondegreen.
That, or take these chicken wings and learn to fry again, learn to make them crisp. There we go.
Excuse me while I kiss this guy. Yeah.
You know what the word of the year is, according to Merriam-Webster's dictionary. There's a word of the year.
I believe it's gaslighting.
That's
Gaslighting.
right.
Yeah.
Right, it is.
Yes. So there is our lexical contribution, at least in English. I'm sure we're going to have a few more words in Yiddish to join because we have a great lineup today. We have former federal prosecutor Michael Bullotta. How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Real well. You got an aerial shot today. I like that. We've got attorney
I have a
Steve
drone in
Fishman.
my office.
You got a drone in my office. There's a Henny Youngman joke in there. Steve Fishman is joining us, attorney. Great to have you back, Fish.
I'll be here for a while, but I'm gonna have to get out of here. So
okay, we're going to get to a story that you would like to talk to pretty early on. We have former Chief of Staff to Mayor Mike Duggan, Alexis Wiley, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer,
who just made Genius on Spelling Bee today.
Yes.
So,
Wow.
There we go.
Genius, you did?
Yes, I made it to Genius today. So,
Wow.
Gosh, this
Without
is a
cheating.
hard one for me. I'm not there yet. We'll talk offline on that.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
We also have still reaching us from Israel, the co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. How's it going, Allan?
Good. Here from the
Excellent.
Holy Land. And having worked with Nancy, I'm not surprised she reached Genius.
Oh, that's
You're so
All
nice.
the love.
Yeah,
Man.
you're so nice.
Three
crowed
months
about
out.
it.
3 months out from Valentine's Day, and Allan is getting a head start on it. Okay, well, back here in the Metro Detroit area, we are, of course, in the 1-year anniversary of the Oxford shootings, something which was commemorated in a very somber way up in that town, including the day off for the schools. But we also have a revelation that some board members from the Oxford School District have now come out and have started to talk about what they say is how this could have all been avoided, that there were certain protocols which really weren't followed, and there were certain signs which were clearly missed. How much is this going to impact the cases, criminal and civil, and how much is this going to affect the collective psyche for the people of Oxford?
I have a question right from the beginning, and maybe the attorneys can answer this. Dana Nessel had offered multiple times to investigate, do a review of the whole thing, and she was rebuffed by the school district. I don't understand how the attorney general has to wait for permission for something like a crime that's been committed. Maybe you guys can answer that, or
I think I can answer that.
yeah.
I don't know that she was quote unquote waiting. My feeling is that the prosecutor's office got involved, and the prosecutor herself, she wants to be in charge of this investigation. She's been very, very much in the media, in the spotlight on this, and I just don't think that the spotlight was big enough for both her and Dana Nessel. I think that's what really was going on. And I'm pretty sure if I had to wager, I would say that the prosecutor communicated that to the school board folks in Oxford, and that's why the quote unquote rebuff happened. That's my belief, but that's just a guess.
I would push back on that and say that that's not accurate. But I think that what the Attorney General offered to do was a outside review, right?
Right.
The actual crime is in the jurisdiction of, happened in Oakland County. It is in the jurisdiction of the Oakland County Prosecutor's Office. She offered to do a review. There is no law that says that they have to accept the offer to do a review. Now, in the future, there is some conversation that I've heard that there could be a law introduced that could, if something like this happened again, that the Attorney General would be would automatically have the right to go review, and you can't say yay or nay. That was the question. And the school district decided to hire an outside entity. And what I had understood was, I think it was an internal decision that they made on their own. It was not no one influenced it either way.
All right.
Well, I don't see any way it's a crime that happened. I agree with what Michael was saying. I mean, it's a crime that happened in Oakland County. The Oakland County Prosecutor's Office investigates it. Whether Karen McDonald wanted to invite Dana onto the same stage, that seems to me it's up to her. You don't need two different criminal prosecutions going on. With respect to, I don't know enough about what the Attorney General is authorized to do in terms of conducting an independent investigation to what end. It seemed to me that what she was trying to do was bogart her way into the criminal investigation, and Karen McDonald said no. That's what it seemed to me. So I kind of am with Michael on it.
I just want to push back one more time on it. The offer was to review the circumstances and procedures at the school. She did not offer to be part of the criminal investigation. It was an offer to conduct an outside review. That's what was the offer that was.
But to me, it seems like an attorney general should have the right to say, hey, I want to review this for other schools as well, to sort of see if we can correct things in the future for other school districts. It just seems to me that she would have the jurisdiction. I wonder if she had just said, I'm doing it, what legal grounds the school board would have to push back and say, we don't want anyone reviewing our procedures at this point. And the fact that these school board members have come forward, it has to be a gift in the civil cases at minimum. I think the criminal cases stand alone, but on their own, it's a separate thing. But I think in terms of the civil cases, which are naming as defendants the school board, I think it's an amazing advantage for the all the attorneys who are suing.
Do you think that the revelations made by the board members could be a mitigating factor when it comes to sentencing for Ethan Crumbley, saying, look, they had a shot at stopping me, they didn't do so? And also, is there the possibility of criminal negligence charges being brought against the school district?
I'd say no on the criminal part, and maybe the lawyers have a different. I can't see it making any difference at all. I mean, he killed 4 people, he shot 7, wounded 7 others. I mean, he can't get anything but mandatory life anyways.
Okay.
It's been heartbreaking
Steve?
to see the changes in that kid's face from the different, from the different court appearances he's had. I mean, he's growing up, and you realize his life is over. He was still a little boy when he went into that school with a loaded gun.
And like you said, Nancy, I mean, it's only been 12 months. And
I know
it's
been
so
a year,
much,
but it's like that's the year when they start to fill out and look like real adults, and it's terrible to see.
Yeah, for me it was sophomore year in college, but I get your point. Along with that, though, you have the Michigan Supreme Court sending the case back to the Court of Appeals of his parents, the Crumbley Parents case, still trying to decide and determine whether or not they should have been charged with involuntary manslaughter. At the very least, of course, that's going to slow down the process. But is there the chance that the Court of Appeals might make a decision that they were erroneously charged with involuntary manslaughter?
I can
You
take
want to go or you want me to go?
I'll take a first crack, Steve.
Go ahead.
So what I would say to that is that the issue that was appealed was the probable cause determination to hold the Crumbley parents over for trial. In other words, was there probable cause that involuntary manslaughter was committed by the parents? And the main issue in that is the causation issue, because involuntary manslaughter, while it does not require intent to kill, it absolutely requires causation. So the actions of the parents had to be the natural and the natural and probable result of that. Their actions had to be the death of those children in the school. And I think it's very difficult to say that could be true. And some cases are such that no matter just based on the facts that are known at the time of the preliminary examination, a court can rule as a matter of law that cannot rise to the level of involuntary manslaughter. This is a very first time unique situation, unprecedented charging decision to charge involuntary manslaughter with negligent gun at one's house that's later used to commit murder. It would be akin to loaning someone a vehicle, and that vehicle's then used to kill another person. And so I think there is a chance that could happen. The Court of Appeals tried to defer and said it's too early to do it, and the Supreme Court said no, you got to decide it. So I think that is a real possibility.
Okay, Steve?
Here's the thing everybody has to keep in mind, okay? State court, you have a preliminary examination. At the preliminary examination, the burden on the prosecutor is to prove probable cause that the crime was committed, probable cause that the defendant did it. Okay, so the ruling that the district court judge made was, regardless of what words she used or how she wanted to explain it, she found that there was probable cause to believe that the crime was committed of involuntary manslaughter and that the Crumbleys committed it. When you appeal something like that, that's the only issue on appeal. It's not really a question of whether, the court may be thinking about that in their minds, but they're not going to say, hey, this has never been charged before, therefore you can't do it. That's not the way they're supposed to proceed. From my understanding, and I'm not following the case as closely as some people, the Court of Appeals kind of just punted, is what they basically said. Well, we'll just decide this later on down the road. Well, they're not able to do that. If they get to the Court of Appeals on that issue, the Court of Appeals has to decide if the examining magistrate, which would be the district court, abused her discretion by binding them over. And that's really all the Supreme Court is telling them as far as what I saw. Look, this is your job, do it. And then if they want to appeal to us or they want to go back and try the case or whatever, they just want them to make a decision as to that issue only, because that's the only issue that's in front of an appellate court in state court. It's different than federal court because there's no real preliminary exam. It's just a different situation. So the Supreme Court, I think correctly, told them, look, you guys are getting paid down there. Go to work, make a decision, and then we'll see what happens from here. And that's why it delays the case. It's not the Supreme Court's fault. It's actually the panel of the Court of Appeals that kind of kicked the football down the road, and that's where we are now.
It's interesting to see how this is playing out in Oxford among parents. They see anything which could take the gas off the pedal as being something that's triggering them, that the prospect that the Crumbley parents may not be held accountable in some fashion. I mean, right or wrong from the legal standpoint, but as far as how this is playing out is rather sobering. Fish, yeah.
But when somebody tells you that, just keep in mind they're locked up.
Yeah,
they're locked up right now. If the case got reversed or they get found not guilty, they're paying a price. They're sitting in a goddamn Oakland County jail, locked up for a year. I'm not sympathizing with them. I hate guns anyway. But the point is it's not like they're out there walking around doing whatever they want. They've been locked up, and they're going to stay there until there's some determination one way or the other.
Right. I mean, it seems like, and you guys may know better, but it seems like even with the charges, the manslaughter charges, they might only get 2 or 3 years anyways, and they'd probably be applied to time served.
Not probably.
They would. Well, yeah.
Time served every case.
Right. So,
Steve,
they are paying a price at this point.
Like Steve, I'm not particularly empathetic towards the parents, but I am actually surprised that they are being held without bond for this sort of unprecedented charging decision. And are they really a danger to causing some other child to shoot up a school? I mean, I'm really surprised that they're not on bond.
They're a danger to escaping. I mean, they hid out. If they had when they got charged, if they had come forward and turned themselves in, they wouldn't be behind bars right now. But the fact that they hid out,
escaping things. Oh, go on, Steve.
Michael, you got to remember, the reason that you're thinking like that is because you're used to federal court, where two excellent things happen. Judges are appointed rather than elected, and U.S. attorneys don't have to run for office. So when you try to compare what goes on in the federal building, you're using the standard we would use in the federal building. And in the federal building, You and I both know, of course they'd be out on bond. It wouldn't even be a close call for the reasons that you're saying and the fact they have no record, blah, blah, blah. But this is not what goes on in state court. You've got the press, you got the media, you got the people, the public, they're all screaming and yelling. And these people got to run for office, the judge and the prosecutor. So it's a completely different kettle of fish when you're in state court than when you're in federal court. And that's why, at least as far as I'm concerned, and from a lawyer's standpoint, federal court's much more reasonable place to be as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there is another case that's coming up through the pipeline, and that involves the University of Michigan star defensive lineman Mazi Smith, who has been charged on a weapons felony charge for an incident dating back to October the 7th, allegedly involving a concealed weapon. Much is being reported on this, particularly trying to compare it to what happened in the tunnel during the Michigan State game, where several Michigan State football players were in fact charged, one with a felonious assault charge and the other with misdemeanor charges, and the Big Ten fining Michigan State $100,000 for that. Steve, I have a feeling you want to talk about this.
Well, the first thing, I'm not even going to waste my breath trying to compare what happened in the tunnel to Mazi Smith's arrest, and I'm going to comment on some of the facts of that arrest that somehow people are not bothering to write, particularly Mr. Mitch Albom, who wrote a shithead column today, crapping all over everybody, okay? So there were three things that he talked about, and I want to address them. The first one was guns. Nobody hates guns more than me. I don't believe in guns. I don't own any guns. I wish nobody had a gun. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing he talked about was how Coach Harbaugh and Ward Manuel, the athletic director, have handled it. I don't have the right or the ability to comment on that. I know, I think, why they did it, what they did, which is to continue to let him play. I happen to think they're right because I know Mazi Smith a little bit, and I do think he's a really good kid, but that's really not part of what this discussion is supposed to be. What they're really criticizing, what people are saying, is it's the prosecutor's office. After all, Ellie Savitt went to Michigan and he teaches at the law school in Blase Splee. So there's a number of things that people need to know about this case that it's not being made all that clear. Keep in mind, I don't watch television, so I'm reading it in a newspaper, particularly Albom's column. Number one, they made a big stink. Mazi was released when he was stopped. They found a pistol, okay, and he was released. Once the guy is released, and this is routine as a traffic stop, once a guy's released nowadays, you may not get charges. We have cases in my office that aren't any notorious person. We have cases that have been for a year in state court that they haven't yet charged. Either they're overwhelmed with cases or whatever the reasons are. There's nothing unusual about that happening. And if they were doing it on purpose, think about this. Albom is kind of suggesting that Ellie Savitt's doing this to help Michigan. Then why would you possibly release it now, right before they're playing for the Big Ten championship? If you're really trying to cover everything up, you'd release it January the 15th, after the season is over and after they play. The truth of the matter is, it took the same amount of time. You mentioned the date October 7. I can't remember what date we played state, but it was right around there. And when did they charge those guys? A week ago. That's just the way things are going these days. If you're released, just like the state guys, they went home after the thing. If you're locked up, like Imani Bates, because Albom tried to make that comparison as well, he was locked up. And I'm going to get to that in a minute as to why he was locked up. Once you're locked up, they got 48 hours to charge or not. And in that case, they charged, right? Of course, the resolution of his case is going to be the same as Mazi Smith's probably, which is meaning he's not going to have a record, et cetera, and so forth. So now let's talk about the facts of the case. Mazi Smith's driving. He's in a car. Or he's in a truck, I guess. He's got a gun that he purchased legally that's registered. That's a little bit different from Imani Bates, who had a street gun where the serial number was filed off. It's kind of a different situation. Those of us who've done this for a living, you know the difference between a legal gun and an illegal gun. Number two, more importantly, it's unloaded. It's an unloaded gun. It doesn't mean it's not still illegal, but it's unloaded. There's no ammunition in the goddamn gun. And Albom's making it sound like the guy's driving around with a pistol ready to shoot somebody. That's number two. And number three, which hasn't yet come out, it was in a box. If you have a legal gun and you don't have a CCW permit, or what they now call CPL, You can still carry the gun around. You just have to put it in a bag. There's some rules, stick it in the trunk or something like that. A lot of these vehicles now don't have trunks. You got to have it in a box. It's got to be separate from the ammunition, etc. My understanding is he had it in the box, but he didn't have it in the box the right way. The policewoman, I believe, based on what I know, saw it as she was approaching to talk to him about the speeding ticket, and she saw it. Or he maybe, and then he probably said he had it, because a lot of the guys do. Like, yeah, I have a gun. The point I'm saying is it was illegal. That's true. But was it illegal in the same way as you're driving around with a loaded gun that's got the serial numbers filed off? I say all that to say that what's going to happen in this case is routine, and it would happen to Joe Blow, and it's happened to tons of Joe Blows that people in my office represent in state court. If you don't have a record and the gun's not dangerous, because obviously if it's not loaded and it's a legal gun registered to you, you're going to wind up getting, in all likelihood, you're going to get a misdemeanor. And if you're young enough, and Mazi Smith is young enough, you're going to get it pursuant to HIDA, which is the Homes Youthful Training Act. And what's the purpose of it? So a guy will have no record. But if his name was Mazi Smith or Joe Blow, the exact same thing would happen. And to criticize the Ann Arbor, the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office for this is insane. And it shows a complete lack of knowledge of how the system now works when you have somebody like him. And here's Nancy ready to tell me how full of shit I am.
Not at all. I was just, that was magnificent. I just
Nancy hates elbows.
This is
just
why
one question.
Steve Fishman
Just
is
one
my
question.
first phone call in when I get arrested.
Yeah, Nancy, just
Hey, Nancy,
I just had one question. What was that middle part, Steve? Anyway, go ahead, Nancy.
I mean, it was great.
So the conclusion, what I'm saying is, and Michael knows this because he's had a lot of, high publicity cases. The thing I always try to stress, and I don't like to make a ton of comments, to the press, but when I talk to people, if they call me, and for instance, I'll be the first to tell you, I read Angelique Shengelis's, she was the first one yesterday morning. She didn't mention it was unloaded. She didn't mention it was, I sent her, and she and I are friends. I sent her a nasty ass email saying, what the hell are you doing? Did you know this gun was unloaded? Did you know he bought it legally? It's not smart, obviously, to carry around a gun, and it's not smart to drive with no license either, which it appears he was doing. But at least everybody should be presented with all the facts. If you want to say that Harbaugh should have suspended him or Ward should have suspended him, that's something you can talk about. But let's not shit all over the prosecutor's office or the police department, because they did absolutely nothing wrong. They did what they would do in any case like this, as long as the person satisfied these criteria.
To jump in, I think that's what you're really saying, I think, is that people need to, Ellie, I personally know Ellie. He's the kind of person who I think is going to look at the facts, and the fact that this kid, it seems like he's being treated fairly and based on the facts of this case. And shouldn't that be what we advocate for? Take stupid football off, like take it off the table. We want every kid, whether you're a black, white, whatever, to be treated fairly in the legal system. And sounds like it's an example of that. And I love that you gave me all the facts, because I live in a Michigan State household with my husband, who's like went to state, biggest fan. He was so mad about this whole thing and was like, tell me about it. He didn't say anything about unloaded gun, box, all that stuff. I cannot wait to go home and be like, did you know the gun was unloaded and it was in a box?
And it was purchased by him and registered.
You've given me all the facts I need to go.
My point to the press, particularly to Mr. Album, is why in the hell wasn't that in all of their columns?
And my question, Alexis, is why the hell isn't your husband tuning in and listening to you on this show?
Exactly. I'm going to tell him. I'm like, you need to watch this. You need to watch this. There are a lot of facts you don't have.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to go. I appreciate. I called Lengel in Eretz Yisrael. That's the land of Israel, for those of you who can't speak Hebrew. I wanted to come on because I really did. I'm glad, Alexis, that you said that, because there's got to be a ton of people out there who, you don't have to be a Michigan State person. They say, oh, here we go again. The big brother got a break because he plays football for Michigan. Blase splee. That's a bunch of crap, and I just wanted to come out and say it. I appreciate it. Everybody have a good weekend.
Thanks.
Just
one question for you, Fish. Closing remarks about last week's game and remarks about tomorrow's game for Michigan.
What did I tell you guys the last time I was on? I told you we were going to beat Ohio State, and we did it without Corum playing, which is pretty damn impressive, number one. What do I think will happen tomorrow? I think they'd stirred up enough crap between Corum having his knee surgery and make Mike Morris maybe not playing, and now this shit with Mazi. I think we'll still win by 20.
Wow.
Wow.
Right.
Okay.
Hail to the victors.
All right.
All
Hail.
right. There we
blue.
go. Thanks, Fish. Take care.
All right. Have a good
Wow.
one.
Well, now
Okay.
I mean, and I hate to use this
His
particular
number
phrase.
is in my phone because when
He's on it. This is why he's the lawyer everybody calls.
someday something bad's going
Yes,
to
you're
happen, and I'm going to be
so
in the
fun.
Wayne County lockup
You
with the
know,
working
I-
girls, and I'm going to call Steve. So
I
there
have
you
a
go.
story, a quick story about Steve Fishman. I was having lunch with Judge Avon Cohn about, I don't know, I can't remember, not this past summer, the summer before. And I asked him, I said, are there some lawyers that you really enjoy seeing in the courtroom? And he said, well, yeah. And I said, like who? And he goes, Steve Fishman. And I go, anyone else? He goes, I probably, yeah, but I just can't think of it. But, so.
Well, Alexis, and I know this is going to be just a terrible choice of words, but now you've got ammo to push back on.
I got everything
on
I
your
need.
husband.
Are you
Yeah.
are you a Wolverine, Alexis? Did you graduate?
No, I went. I'm not in it. I'm not in it. I went to Northwestern.
Oh, okay.
But Bryce is all about Michigan State and can't stand Michigan. And
There you
you
go.
know, he's normally very fair on these issues, but he's like, did you see what happened in Washoe County? You see what your boy Ellie did? And I was like, what? He's gonna be so mad I told this story. So mad.
But when
I
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say I grew up a Michigan fan, but then I went to Michigan State, so I root for both. So
Okay.
Well, Alexis, I mean, when you matriculated at Northwestern, don't they make you adopt a real football team? I mean, I'm just remembering the bulletin when I was looking at Northwestern. So, like I said, I don't know.
That is so funny. Yeah, no, you're an orphan forever. You adopt no one. You just like football in general.
Yeah.
I must say, a beautiful campus at Evanston. I've given a talk out there. It's just
wonderful.
gorgeous. So,
Makes
well,
losing
there's
somewhat terrible.
well, there's other football players that are in the news. In fact, one is running for Georgia Senate.
Oh,
None
yeah.
other than Herschel Walker. Yes, he is. Right now, it seems, although within the statistical margin of error, he's 4 points behind Raphael Warnock, who's running for re-election. And two things I thought were very noteworthy: the record early voting turnout. I think 300,000, or was it, or 3 million already. And also the abandoned ship attitude when it comes to Donald J. Trump Jr., who seems to be whistling past the cemetery at midnight because he's disavowing the Herschel Walker
Don Jr.
phenomenon.
is?
No, I'm sorry, Donald J. Trump Sr.
Oh,
That's
okay,
right.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I was like, Don Jr.'s in this mix, huh?
That's right. Well, I
Right.
think he's always in the mix somewhere.
Right.
But are have they just decided to abandon poor Mr. Walker, leaving him at the altar of the election?
It sounds as though Herschel has abandoned his own campaign. I mean, I read somewhere that his campaign manager is mad at him because he let the entire Thanksgiving weekend go by without doing anything. And, you know, it's not surprising that he's tired. I mean, I'd be tired of this too. I mean, maybe the wind has just gone out of his sails. I don't know. But, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine who lives in Atlanta, and he said he had to wait in line for 90 minutes, I think, to vote a few days ago. So there's still a lot of enthusiasm for this race.
He's
I heard
still
that
in
he-
the
I
race.
heard
He's
he didn't
still
even pay
he's
for
still
a
in the
single
race.
abortion.
He's in it. Oh, go on. Sorry.
Oh, I just
Yeah.
made a bad joke that he didn't even pay for a single abortion this weekend.
I was saying the race is still fairly close, although Warnock is, I think, a little bit ahead, but not by much. But you know, it's interesting. Sarah Palin, I think, sort of set off this thing where you didn't have to be very bright to hold a very high office. And since then, we've had this slew of candidates, like, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's like a more evil bacteria. She's sort of morphed into this, you know, and you have Herschel Walker, you have Tudor Dixon, and Tudor Dixon was actually fairly articulate, not the brightest, but you have these candidates, and you know, these mean not very bright. In Herschel Walker's case, he's just not bright at all. I mean, he rambles. It's frightening that a guy like that could be a U.S. senator.
Chronic traumatic. Well, there have been plenty of U.S. senators who are
idiots.
and who are idiots. I mean, so you can't really single them out for that. And I don't think you can single out Sarah Palin either, because what this all started with, going much farther, is I'm not a career politician. I'm not a career politician. I'm here, and it's like, tell me the last time you took your car in to be worked on by somebody who's not a career mechanic, or had your doctor, your medical appointments for somebody who's, hey, I don't know anything about this shit. I mean, it's not that politics is the same as neurosurgery, but it does require a certain skill set, and it does require some qualifications. And the idea that Tudor Dixon thought she could be governor of the state of Michigan, which is like running a very complicated, multi-billion-dollar corporation, based on the fact that she was briefly a salesperson at her father's failing steel company, and then a commentator on one of the worst, one of the most obscure right-wing websites, this is the end. This is the logical end of that argument.
But that's a mistake. Go ahead, Alexis.
I think the thing that we have to also realize, the whole party right now nationally is deflated, right? Yeah. Not just Herschel Walker being tired. I don't understand. Like, literally, I would be so exhausted if I had to go through that terrible Georgia process of that crazy November election, and then you got to do another runoff like wolf, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
But the entire party is deflated because of the mass losses. You've got Donald Trump being laughed at, right? Yep. So he's really not helpful to anyone, even helpful to himself, right? Everyone's wanting him to step aside and let DeSantis slip in, right? Mm-hmm. He won't do that. But I think that, again, the energy has deflated and Democrats are fired up, which is why you saw people turn out on early voting. They all came through. And also people who just want sanity. It just seems like this was the election where people called for sanity. Because I don't think you saw many, you didn't see a lot of extremists on the left. I don't want to say extremists, that's too harsh, but people who are far, far left leaning, they weren't necessarily the big winners this year. You saw people who are more in the middle, who could pull together Democrats, but also independents, and then recovering Republicans, right? Right. I think those are the folks who turned out to say, Herschel Walker, decency's got to prevail at this point, and you're not it. You're not it.
Yeah.
I was going to say that when Nancy mentioned and says, these are big corporate, it's like running a big corporation. That's the problem. We had Rick Snyder, who is a smart guy and who's really basically, I think, a nice guy, but the guy treated it like a corporation. He talked to the constituents as customers, and he fucked up in such a big way. It's more than just business, and we always think business people can do great.
Fan of experience does matter, right?
Yes.
Starting somewhere does matter. So just because you've run a company or just because you're a commentator, you don't necessarily need to start at the top. Might make sense, but the problem now is that I think for you to even want to run for office, you have to have a ridiculous ego. I mean, there just is a lot of ego to it, and sometimes it's not checked, and you have people who go, say I need to be at the top.
Well, ridiculous ego and $77 million being spent in this runoff election in Georgia. I mean, you need some seriously deep pockets as well.
Yes.
Or know enough people, right? You got to have a strong enough message. There's enough of a network where you personally don't have to have deep pockets, but you have to have a strong enough message and stamina to be able to go the distance on this.
Very much. And I just want to make one point, Lengel. That was a very rough comparison, because the other pet peeve that I have is I'm going to run government like a business. It's that's like saying I'm going to run my veterinary office like a cosmetic surgery clinic. I mean, there are common factors, but you can't do that.
Actually, Nancy, in Beverly Hills, California, I think those two actually do exist. in one building.
Probably
Yes.
so.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're looking at, as Alexis, you were saying. I mean, look at the troubles that Kevin McCarthy is having. He thought he was a shoo-in. He was salivating for literally an entire year that he's going to be the shoo-in Speaker of the House, and that now is being threatened from within his own party. There is Newt Gingrich, who apparently no stranger to saying the sky is falling, saying that Biden is winning in part because of the divisiveness within the Republican Party. But I don't think that the crazies have completely gone away. We know here in Michigan, there is now a pretty heavy and heated contest for state party chair for the Republicans. Matt DePerno and Christina Caramo, both having lost their elections, respectively, for Attorney General and Secretary of State running, and Pete Hoekstra coming in to be the quote-unquote voice of reason and the big boy pants wearing Republican in this.
Let's not forget this. Also, he's also a multiple loser. I mean, he lost to Debbie to Senator Debbie Stabenow a few years in 2012, 10 years ago, and he was also the person who ran the incredibly racist Debbie Spend It Now commercial during the Super Bowl that year, which was so over the top that the actress who was playing the rice patty girl in it actually had to make a public statement the next day saying, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was going to be this bad. So, this is,
it's a mess.
It's a mess, and it's going to continue to be a mess. And I don't see the cooler heads prevailing just yet.
I think we will not see a change in the Republican Party. The Civil War will continue, and the crazies will continue to run it until the presidential election, because that's going to make really it is going to be so fascinating to see the Trump-DeSantis dynamic. And whoever emerges from that, which my money is on DeSantis, but he will be bloody by the time he comes out of it, which would make it easier to potentially beat him. But I think it's going to be fascinating to watch it's going to be bloodshed.
So, Michael, we usually have Fish to give us the barometer on the indictment watch. Where do you see things going with Trump moving forward? Do you think that there's going to be an imminent indictment either in Georgia or at the federal level?
Wow, it sure seems like there are so many of his potential crimes on the stove right now that one of them is going to be cooked to perfection at some point. I don't know if it's going to be a state or federal. It could be both. But certainly what we've seen from the January 6th committee provides plenty of ammunition for a federal indictment on obstructing a federal process, a federal hearing, which was going to be the affirmation of the vote count. So I do think it's likely at some point. What's going to be weird is if it is imminent, we could actually have a former president running for president and going to trial in his state of Georgia. That would be so wild. Talk about fun to watch, Alexis.
We'll be wild.
Your popcorn and just salivating like crazy. Anyway.
So that's a great point, Michael. I mean, if let's say Trump is indicted somewhere or anywhere or everywhere, and he is at the same time running, Alexis, do you think that when he is, as you said, it's going to be probably a two-man race between him and DeSantis? Do you think with an indictment, Trump will up the crazy, or will you think he'll downshift?
He will absolutely up the crazy. I don't think he'll be successful because, again, what we're seeing is people are saying enough already across the board. It's just so crazy, right?
He doesn't want to hear that. And we keep forgetting he's not running for president because he wants to be president. I mean, he likes the car, he likes the plane, he likes the hail to the chief, but he's not interested in public service or even policy in any significant way. He's doing this solely to redeem his ego. And to get people to just, he's an attention junkie.
And a self-pardon, a possible self-pardon.
Yeah,
he'll try
people
that.
actually think that the more he stays out there, the more he can say, look, this is political. They're attacking me for political reasons. So he can give himself a level of cover. I mean, people, the whole reaction around Mar-a-Lago being raided was, again, people feeling like this is, he's just being attacked. I still don't believe he'll get indicted. I still don't see it.
I see there's no way that he can't get indicted. Even if there's a dispute over whether he was allowed to take some stuff or he, declassified things. The fact is, they asked for the documents. He at some point said, "You've got them all," and then they executed a search warrant and got 12 boxes of documents. I can't see how that, and Michael, maybe you can, I can't see how that couldn't be a minimum obstruction of justice. Michael?
Alan, I think that obstruction of justice for not turning over documents would be a much more difficult case to prove than what's been laid out in the January 6th committee as far as obstructing a congressional hearing. And you have to show intent that he intended. He can easily say, as can many people that have lots of those under them, working for them, lawyers, assistants, he could say that he believed that everything was turned over. So I don't know what evidence they have, but I think that would have the hardest road, and I think that would have the least amount of jury appeal, quite frankly, than the obstruction charges. And to Alexis's point, I think she's absolutely hitting this on the head by saying that Trump wants the political nature of his being to be his cover, his defense. Because if Trump is rendered politically irrelevant, then if he goes on trial, he can't say that this trial is about keeping me from office. No, you lost. You didn't even win your party's primary. I think that he's desperate for that, for those reasons as well, but probably mostly his ego.
And I think one thing I would want to just remind you, right? When you drive down 96 and you're going you pass Brighton and you're like going towards Novi, whatever, there's a big Trump flag right on the freeway, right? Again, this guy has, no other president has anything like that. He's on a different level. And I think people, his followers view it's cult-like, right?
Yes,
people,
it's a cult.
view him very differently. So imagine what he'll be able to do if he does get indicted. He's in court. Imagine the crowd. I just picture more January 6th style incidents.
But I think people are rooting. There's plenty of people now, and particularly after the dinner with Kanye and all that, there are plenty of people who want to see him get indicted. Republicans, right now, the Democrats are sitting back and amused by the fact that, okay, you wanted this guy, guess what? He won't go away. And they're like, please go away already. And the Democrats are just amused by it all.
Yeah. Well, getting back to my analogy that I made, I think on the show at least a couple of times, if the love affair with the Tea Party, which became the MAGA wing of the party, was essentially like a frat boy picking up a trashy girl in a roadhouse late at night and taking her home and having sex with her, and then waking up the next day and she's going through his things and moving her brother into the spare bedroom. It's like, this is when she gets pregnant. And it's like, well, I'm pregnant and I just, so I feel like this is.
What accent was that?
Hey, Nancy.
Lost when she started going through stuff. I was like, what is she gonna do? Who is this girl? What is she gonna do next? Now she's pregnant.
Alexis, I think that reached the Ohio-Kentucky border.
Yes, it did. I'm sorry. I don't mean to imply that everyone with an Appalachian accent is trashy, but it's just one that I've got.
Yeah, Nancy,
that
probably
does not sound like East Coast snobbery at all to me.
No, yes, of course not. Yeah. I'm from Ohio, okay?
That story went from Ohio into West Virginia, down to it was everywhere.
Nancy, that story was far more appropriate when we were talking about the Michigan-Ohio State game. So it's all about location. Well, to me, I look at this. I'm wondering if the 6-year political reality show nightmare is coming to an end, or if it's starting to subside. It's almost like one of those balls that bounces. It goes harmonic motion, half the height as the previous bounce, and then half as it's going down. On the one hand, we could say that it seems as though Trump's protestations don't have as much oxygen
Right.
as they did, but of course, an indictment could take it to another level. But Alan, you mentioned dinner time. And yes, there was a dinner appointment at Mar-a-Lago that had none other than Kanye West and white supremacist Nick Fuentes as dinner guests for the Donald. We can talk about Kanye in other dimensions, especially what's been going on as of today with Elon Musk suspending him yet again from Twitter. But what do you think about this motley assortment around the dinner table at Mar-a-Lago? People clearly still are kissing the ring.
I think that Trump is now working on a movie, an updated version of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Are you comparing Kanye West to Sidney Poitier? What the hell?
No, the woman, the daughter, Spencer Tracy's and Katharine Hepburn. I thought Fuentes would be Sidney Poitier, but what is going on here? Yeah,
I want to say something. I just want to say something. I had a conversation when Trump was still running with in 2016 with a local PR person. I won't mention his name. And we were talking about the appearance at the Detroit Economic Club, which was thrown together fairly hastily. I don't know. I guess it was, a lot of those things were pretty hasty. And you might recall it was interrupted by, wave after wave of people screaming from the audience who infiltrated the audience. I was there too. Yeah. And he said something to me, and he said, I've dealt with a lot of these presidential campaigns. And he said, the one thing I have taken away is that every campaign, the man or woman at the top is absolutely a reflection of all the people below. Okay. In other words, you can judge a campaign by its staff. And he said the person who was handling Trump's PR at that point in time was a kid who had just gotten out of college. He knew nothing. I mean, it was just, Mr. Trump, could I work for you? Sure. Remember Hope Hicks? He had her like steaming his suit. And, she was just some functionary in the Trump organization. And now she's, vice president of Nazi propaganda somewhere. But anyway, I think that's what this is. I mean, can anybody imagine Barack Obama like meeting with, just having some rando come in to have dinner with him, at his house in Martha's Vineyard without doing the simplest bit of vetting and saying like, who is this guy? I mean, why, because people pay attention to presidents. I mean, they pay attention to ex-presidents. They want to know what they're doing. And I just can't imagine who is advising him that nobody was able to say, it's bad enough that you're having Kanye West for dinner, but this guy is even worse. But nobody does that. I mean, nobody tells him anything.
Keep in mind, cynical enough to think that maybe Trump wanted that guy there.
Well, yeah, I mean, that might be
Todd whistle to his really. I mean, I feel like Alexis will believe this conspiracy theory, not because you believe conspiracies, but just because
I'm with you. I've been riding with you all day.
So he's getting he's polarizing, or not polarizing. He's congealing his base, and those are the people that like Nick Fuentes.
That's a good verb to choose, congeal. Like grease.
Well, he's made a calculation. How many Jews are there who are going to vote for me, and how many racist Holocaust deniers are going to vote for me? And it's like, pretty obvious.
Well,
I'm going to give up the Jews.
Remember, this is the guy who said there were good people on both sides of the, Virginia.
I sent that New Yorker article to you yesterday, Lengel, about where the guy who's like his number one Orthodox Jewish fan, who says he's Trump ride or die because he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. I mean, he sees him as the biggest friend of the Jews. You had that picture on your Facebook page of the yarmulke with his picture on it.
Yeah.
Like he's clearly got.
It's funny. When I drive in cabs and I'll talk to some of the cab drivers, the Arab cab drivers hate Netanyahu, but a lot of the Jewish cab drivers say Netanyahu is good, just like Trump. And I look and I go, I hate Trump, and they go, oh well,
I hope you reach your destination when you say that.
Right, exactly. Where you hop out.
I don't know, guys. I mean, I'm thinking, a white guy, a black guy, a Hispanic guy, all breaking bread together. I mean, too bad
Sounds like the
Sachin.
beginning of a joke,
Yeah.
Well, too bad Sachin Littlefeather died. Otherwise, it could have, they could have had a bridge game.
Yeah.
But what are you going to do about that? Well, I mean, as we're moving along, then talking about Kanye West, he was on the Alex Jones show, where he amped it up a bit more to the point where I think we were talking off air that even Alex Jones shuddered. But he did show a bit of solidarity with Kanye West. He declared bankruptcy. So I think they're both going for now the same income level.
Yeah.
But also the fact that Elon Musk said, I've had enough, and has suspended Kanye West after having his account restored for posting a Star of David juxtaposed with a swastika. Can this just simply be attributed to Kanye saying, look, I've got mental illness?
No.
No.
Go ahead, Alexis.
No, I think it's a little, I was initially like, this guy has lost his mind, and we were creating a platform for a guy who's clearly in a mental health crisis, right? Mm-hmm. But then when you hear now that, like, for years, he was saying anti-Semitic things and really hateful, terrible things about people, makes you think maybe that's actually this guy's heart and who he actually is. And we've been, he's been handled well enough to be able to hide it from the general public. Now he's having a break, and we're getting a chance to really see a mental health break. And now we're getting to see the real Kanye. I think all these people just really they need to be canceled. Like, this is I'm normally not a canceled type person. I really believe that everyone can be redeemed. They should learn, they can get better. He's at a point where it's just this, we got to be done.
When you're on the Alex Jones show, you are effectively canceled. I mean,
100%.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I feel the same way of that argument. Well, let's keep in mind that he's mentally ill. I think about what happens when I was writing about mental illness, and there's always a case where some person who's off their meds or paranoid or in some terrible psychotic break, commits suicide by cop or hurt somebody else, and mental health advocates always say, the vast majority of people who with these terrible, illnesses are not violent. They're not anti-Semitic. And as you point out, Alexis, he's been doing this for years, on and off his meds, at the top of his game and at the bottom of his game. I think this is just who he is. And
I think the Hitler, once you say, I heart Hitler, that's kind of a little bit, which reminds me of a Norm Macdonald joke who says, the more I hear about Hitler, the more I don't like that guy.
Norm Macdonald, just absolutely. Look, this is why I've always said that for me, rap music died when Vanilla Ice stopped playing music. So, Anyway, so, okay, everybody, stop, collaborate, and listen. I think we're going to that segment of the show, Alan.
Okay, you know what? Before we do, one quick question. I don't know if Michael can answer this. The IRS is now coming after Kwame. Is that something you could talk about?
Sure.
What's your feeling about that whole thing?
Well, they're gonna take what they can take from any kind of income, and the issue again is going to be who received the income. And you're talking, I assume, about the money that was going to his wife. Is that correct? Or is there something new?
I just saw something the other day. They just
they hit him with a huge back tax bill, like $600,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. The story is that he got a $600,000 tax bill.
Something like that. It was $450, but it was a lot. And
my question is, so what? He already has.
Right.
Moral of the story, I think we all need to just pay your tax. You just gotta do it. You gotta do it because they'll come for you.
Even if you're taking money on the side.
He's effectively living his life like O.J. Simpson, or he should be, where he's just doing everything he can not to earn income. And I think that's the way he's going to have to live his life the rest of his life. Mm-hmm. Because the IRS will always be there, and there's somebody in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the asset forfeiture section. Maybe they're even watching this video, and they're going to be, watching the news and they have their Google alerts on, and they're going to find out anytime Kwame or anyone close to him makes money, and they're going to try to seize that money. That's their job. So that's how he
take the jingle out of his jangle. So,
all right.
Take money
Okay.
because you're married to some, or because you're family with, like, I mean, are they going after? You're going after his wife now?
So no. So let's say that he is able to direct money to himself through his wife. If they're able to show that it's a funnel, then that's the same as him getting income. But you're right. If the wife makes money on her own, then that's different. And that's why it was so tricky a few months ago when we heard about, the donations for that big house they were trying to buy through the GoFundMe they set up. And I believe they tried to get that money. I think that's what they were doing. And I don't know if they were successful. I'm no longer with that office.
I don't think there was really.
I don't think they gave. I don't think they even got 1%.
Yeah, his claim was that some friends, they saw a house in Florida that they loved, and some of their friends or relatives said, "Oh my God, let's do a GoFundMe," and he claims that he didn't have anything to really do with it, but there's skeptics about that.
Everybody always wants to give him money. I don't know how you get to be a person like that, but that would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to be that
all right.
person. Okay.
Let's get to the next.
Right, and because I'm dealing with schmucks all my life, I know who a schmuck is, and I know the difference between a real schmuck, a plain schmuck, and just a plain regular schmuck.
Now, Alexis, I know that we've had experiences where the word and just the general tenor of this sometimes causes you to bristle. If you need one, I've got one for you. But if you have one, then please go ahead.
I've been so happy since the election. It's been very hard for me to find schmuck. So I need to.
Wow.
Sometimes I just listen to you guys and then I can come up with something. But go ahead. I'll pass this time.
Okay,
Sunny
then
optimism.
I will be your proxy if you allow me that level of chivalry.
Please.
Okay. All right, Michael.
Yes. So I always have schmucks on the brain just because I run into a few every single day. But the one that and at the risk of going back to a topic we already covered, it relates to Donald Trump and the dinner with Kanye West. But I'm going to make Ye, which is what he's known as now, my schmuck. And the reason why I want to make Ye or Kanye West the schmuck is because when I was reading the story about that, and I learned the reason that he was having this dinner with Donald Trump was to present an idea. And that idea that he presented to Trump was that Kanye West was going to run for president, and he was graciously offering a former president of the United States the opportunity to run again as a vice presidential candidate. And
Yeah.
And I think he might have actually been serious. And that's why I have to say, you've got to be a schmuck to think that you have any chance of any former president agreeing to run for vice president, let alone this one. This was probably the one, the least likely. If there's a 0.00003 chance that a former president would do it, this is a 0.000000001 chance. So that is why he's a schmuck, and he's done moronic things in the past. Like he said, Kanye West said, "I can say anything I want about Jewish people, and Adidas can't fire me. They won't fire me." He dared them to fire him, and they fired him, and he lost tons of money.
He fucked around and he found out. So
Exactly.
The only way he's not a schmuck, I guess, is if he intentionally brought Nick Fuentes with him to try to damage Trump because he views himself in his own mind as a viable candidate for president, and maybe he wants to tag his future adversary. But
he's
again,
he's not
crazy. And I don't mean
level.
that in a clinical way.
It's like bringing a 5'8" radiation tag to have it absorb all of the fall. Well, I mean, at the same time, though, Michael, I think we could be charitable and look at this from the standpoint that, given the fact Trump did win 2 terms in office, the 22nd Amendment would preclude him from serving a third, but he can serve up to 10 years. So maybe he was making him provisional vice president for 2 years, just in case something happened to him. I'm just saying. Okay, that is a good one. Nancy?
Well, that was going to be mine. So
Oh,
I'm going to have to go with a more amorphous one. I'm going to assume that as a very wealthy individual who still is wealthy, although it's changing probably minute by minute, Kanye West still has some version of what you would call a handler in his life. You know, somebody who's keeping his schedule, you know, whatever, tasting his food. And I'm just going to say that anybody who is still working for this guy at this point has to be like one of the number one schmucks. Even if he's ungovernable, it's still, you're still serving somebody who really needs to hit ground. He needs to hit his bottom, and he's not there yet.
I think when you get to Kanye's level, in terms of crazy and how ridiculous he is,
Yeah.
move from handler to hanger on.
Hanger on. Entourage, shall we say. Yeah, his entourage.
So not a W-2, but a 1099.
That's probably not right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Alan.
I am going to go with, and I think this could be a preview of what's to come in the U.S. I'm going to go with Benjamin Netanyahu, since I'm here. He is trying to form a coalition, and because a lot of people don't want to be affiliated with him, he's formed a coalition with the crazies, with the right wingers. He's people who have been convicted of bribery, and they're saying, oh yeah, we'll vote with you, but we want the Prime Minister of Finance, we want this and that. One guy from the far right party, it's called the Gnome Party, a guy Avi Mayoez, has announced that he is going to get rid of the Jerusalem Pride Parade because he says, how crazy is this for people to be in public display in a Jewish state? And even Netanyahu goes, no, we're going to have the Pride Parade. Don't worry about it. And I think what we're seeing here in Israel, which is just total insanity, is we're going to see that with Kevin McCarthy, with all the crazies in Congress who are going to want a piece of the action, like Marjorie Taylor Greene and all the other, Matt Gaetz. They're all going to want prominent positions, and they're going to fuck up the party, just like here. And just an interesting thing, I picked up the Jerusalem Post, the weekend edition, and the headline was from Abe Foxman, who was the national director for probably 30 years of the Anti-Defamation League. And the headline says, I won't support a non-democratic Israel, which is such a big thing. He's so concerned that Netanyahu's going to try to pass legislation to get rid of all his criminal charges. He's going to have all these crazy people. They're going to have these religious zealots who are going to say, who is really a Jew? If you don't wear a yarmulke, keep kosher, whatever the hell it is. It's going to be a mess. We're going to see that in the U.S. in the Republican Party. We're going to see that in the House.
I think what Netanyahu should do, Alan, is he should go ahead and run for office in the West Bank, become elected prime minister of the PA, and then when he goes over to Israel, they can't arrest him because he can claim diplomatic immunity.
Wow.
There you go. Okay.
Gonna need some heavy security, though.
Alexis, I'm going to give you the choice. British or American?
Okay. British.
Okay. This one is Alexis's Schmuck of the Week. It goes to Lady Susan Hussey.
I was hoping that would be you. Yay! Okay, I'm with you.
She's a lady in waiting, also known as a lady of the household in the British royal family. Well, apparently there was a reception at Buckingham Palace this week, bringing about a bunch of different registered charities, one of them being Sister Space, which is a charity which focuses on domestic violence, certainly a very important issue and one that has quite a bit, unfortunately, of resonance in British society today. Well, the founder of this was Ngozi Fulani, who Lady Hussey walked up to and moved her hair out of the way to look at the name badge and then says, oh, well, where are you from? To which Fulani mentioned, well, I'm from London. She says, no, well, where are your people from? So Lady Hussey decided that she was going to channel her inner Spice Girls, but saying, tell me where you're from, where you're really, really from. And I think also representing the late Prince Philip, who was notorious for such gaffes. It doesn't really seem as though it's a gaffe, but really the kind of embedded form of racism that pervades particularly the British establishment. She resigned from her position, is a lady in waiting, but it gets more complicated than that because she also happens to be the godmother of the Prince of Wales, William himself, who's currently in Boston, picking up an Earthshot Prize award, and who very famously said, "We don't have any racism in the royal family," when there were all of these allegations made at the kind of treatment that Meghan Markle was receiving, the Duchess of Sussex, after she had not only married Harry, but also when somebody in the royal family apparently made a comment or a snide remark regarding Archie's color and what his race was going to be. So Lady Susan Hussey, thank you for keeping the British end up. You are Alexis's Schmuck of the Week.
100%. She would have been my Schmuck if I thought long enough. Because Meghan, that's my girl. I love Meghan Markle. I have a spiritual connection with her. Now I feel like she was like, all of you who thought I was not telling the truth about this wild family of people and racist family of people, oh, trust and believe.
Meghan Markle.
Isn't this woman also well into her 80s though?
83.
That's what I thought.
Well, she's an old racist.
All right, that's what I'm just saying though. It's like
Old school racist.
Make young racists. They also
she's waiting. Still waiting. She's waiting.
Yeah.
Waiting.
Yeah. Michael.
And social intelligence. She's waiting for it. She'll get it.
Look, I'm just telling you that family. I'm just saying.
Meghan Markle, I just want to say this. I've been watching on Netflix, binging here, the show Suits, The Suit or something.
Oh, that was the one she was in, yeah.
Yeah, and she's really good. I'm pretty impressed. So
okay, I have to tell my quick Meghan Markle connection. It's really short story if you give me a hot second. Okay, we're both from Los Angeles. We both went to Immaculate Heart. She's a few years, which is a girls' school. We went to Immaculate Heart, then both went to Northwestern, lived in sorority quad, and I was convinced I didn't know her like at all. And I don't know her. Let me start with that. I don't know her. However, this story is actually getting a little too long for the show. When you invite me back, I can finish it. But this is like Nancy's story. I can't make all these turns. I have to catch myself. But anyhow, I have like a love for Meghan Markle, and I just think that she was right all along, and I'm so happy that she's doing well.
And I don't believe her one bit.
And I do believe her adoptive football team is the Michigan Wolverines, Alexis. So just food for thought for next time.
I will take that. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, thank you. So my Schmuck of the Week is none other than Walmart. And this, by the way, is a personal experience. Earlier in the week, I was in Walmart one morning, and I happened to notice that clearly Walmart was gifted Kanye West's Jewish calendar, because as I was going down the center aisle, they had all kinds of food products out, including sardines and candles, and wishing everybody a happy Rosh Hashanah.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Walmart's a visionary company. They're thinking about next year.
Well, I don't know about that, but I think they're nudging the entire Semitic race toward the Gregorian calendar, Alan. So clearly, I'm sure they were trying to talk about Hanukkah, which is coming up next week, but in the to stave off any allegations that Walmart doesn't recycle, they were being ecologically conscious with the calendar. So Walmart, for being absolutely tone deaf yet again, you're my Schmuck of the Week. Listen, I want to thank all of you for being on the show. Wonderful discussion. Michael Bullotta, Alexis Wiley. We're going to hold you to the rest of the story next time. Nancy Derringer and
give me time.
Okay, and Allan Lengel with the last word, of course.
Drive home safely.
All right. Thank you, everybody, and have a great week.
Okay.